Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. Our guest today is Mark Quandt. He's Executive Director of the Northeast Regional Foodbank. He was here once before. It's going to be interesting to hear if there's any changes in the environment. We've had a lot of troubles economically and people out of work. So I'm really glad to have you back, Mark.
Thanks, Richard.
You know, I was fascinated the last time you were here to learn things about the Regional Food Bank, but I want to go over even some of the basic things because I meet people and they still make mistakes. I was reading an article in the newspaper and I noticed some things where I said, I know that's not really the way it is. What's the mission of the Northeast Regional Food Bank?
Well, the food bank works to alleviate hunger. That's our primary purpose, and at the same time prevent the waste of good food. And we do that by collecting large donations of food from the food industry. What we collect are items that are still perfectly good to eat, but that are unmarketable, maybe close to code, or overproduction, or mistakes in production, but the product is, again, still perfectly good to eat, but a company can't sell it. Instead of throwing that type of food out, a company can donate it to the food bank, and then we redistribute that to food pantries, soup kitchens, and other agencies that are serving people in need.
So that really kind of defines things a little bit better. You know, it strikes me as, do I not recall, there was a time in the past, and you know, being over 60, I forget both how long it was and sometimes what it was, but it seems like I used to be in a restaurant or a grocery and think, wow, why are they throwing all this food away? Has it always been that people were putting food to use that might otherwise be wasted?
I think things have changed a bit over time, but there's always been waste in the food industry. There's, in fact, in some cases, there's probably less in certain ways than there was in the past. Just the nature of food production in this country is such that more is produced than people will consume. And there's always errors that occur in production because, again, it's a very large system. Large quantities are produced. You can't grow the perfect vegetable all the time. We in this country tend to be more fussy, so we expect apples to look a certain way and potatoes to be a certain size or broccoli to look a certain way, whatever it is. So from fresh produce, if it doesn't look or feel the way we expect it to, then Americans will tend to be a little bit more fussy about those things. That's why you hear grade A #1 and grading of different vegetables. Well, if an apple or a potato doesn't fall within that grade, a farmer often can't sell it. Oftentimes they call them culls, items that they can't sell. So instead of throwing that food out, it's still good to eat.
It's like culling a herd or culling the vegetables.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the apple. It would taste exactly like the perfectly formed apple. It's just that it doesn't look the same. So there's a lot of product like that gets wasted in the country. So there's always been food that's produced, grown, that never makes it to the table, never makes it past the retailer, whatever the situation is. In those cases, again, in the past, before food banks existed, for the most part, that product was just thrown out. There wasn't really a use for it. Food banks have given companies an alternative. Instead of throwing that out, just more product in the landfills, we can reclaim that product and put it to good use feeding people who are hungry in our community.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So how good are we yet? You get a lot of food, obviously. I'm going to ask you in a little bit how much, but can you still gain by finding sources that aren't being as efficient as they could be?
Oh, absolutely. You know, one thing that's been interesting since the dawn of food banks, because we receipt donors, we provide them acknowledgments and identify what they've donated to us. I think, and with technology, companies are more efficient than they used to be. They make fewer mistakes at the production level
just in time
than in the past. Just-in-time production, right. Just the way it's done now as opposed to the past. In the old days, there used to be, if they had some special they wanted to run, they'd produce mega loads of product and then push it out, and companies would have big inventories of that. Companies don't carry big inventories anymore. They want to carry smaller inventories and not have money tied up in product. They want to have the cash available for other things. So things have changed in the last, since we've been in existence for 28 years, things are very much different in that way than they were in the past. So I think there are greater efficiencies, but there's still mistakes that are made, and companies make and will always make mistakes and make incorrect projections on the amount of product that will be sold. New items will always be test marketed and not make it, so there will always be product that a company can't sell.
So we're really talking about a wide range of things, because if we were just talking about vegetables, you wouldn't have said that. Obviously, a vegetable is going to take a certain amount of time. You have to plant a certain amount, and then you don't know exactly how many other people are going to have success, whether it's going to rain, be dry. But you're talking about also canned goods and all kinds of processed foods.
Anything. The food bank receives fresh food, non-perishable product, refrigerated product, frozen product, and we also handle a lot of non-food items also. Paper towels, personal hygiene items, soaps, different things like that, again, mistakes are made. Packaging gets torn sometimes, so in the grocery store you'll see the boxes that are crinkled, the cans that have a dent, the labels that are ripped, whatever. Those are items that, again, as consumers, we tend to push aside and take the item behind it. Well, retailers will pull those items off the shelf, send it back for credit, and then that product can be donated to the food bank. We call it salvage. That's the food bank term for that type of product. And we have to sort through all that, separate what is still usable from what is not usable, and then we repack it and distribute that also. So there are many different types of product that is donated to the food bank and that we're able to then redistribute.
How much food do you get from major distributors, such as a large supermarket chain? Do you get things from small operations as well?
Really,
and individuals.
Anybody within the food chain can make a donation to the food bank. So it really varies from a small, maybe processor, a small farmer, to the Price Choppers, Hannaford's, Freihofers, big, large corporations. That those types of companies might donate hundreds of thousands of pounds of food in a single year. A small donor may make one donation of a few hundred pounds in a year. So it really can vary. Individuals also donate. We do have people walk in and drop off a bag of food. We have a lot of groups do food drives for the food bank, and that could be 50 pounds to thousands of pounds.
And it's all welcome.
Oh, absolutely. We'll take any type of product that we know will be of benefit to the agencies we serve. So we're happy to take that type of food. Oftentimes individuals will, instead of bringing a bag of groceries to the food bank, will just take it directly to a local food pantry. But it doesn't matter. If you give it to us, it'll get to those organizations. You had mentioned earlier kind of the confusion sometimes people have about what the food bank is. And I think the biggest confusion I think that people have, and I think it's less than it used to be, but people are familiar with the term food pantry. They hear food pantry, food bank, and I think that's where the confusion comes in. They think of the food bank as maybe a big food pantry, and they think of a kind of a church basement or just a big closet where we have individual
maybe
cans
people
of product.
with a line outside your door waiting to get
the
some
food bank does not serve individuals directly. We provide food to the food pantries and soup kitchens and shelters. So we're serving the agencies. It's kind of like a wholesaler in a sense, that we're in the middle between the food companies and the agencies. We're in the middle, taking that product from the food companies. So instead of the food companies having to try to figure out a way to distribute that to 50, 60, 100 different agencies, they give it to the food bank, we give them a receipt, and then we take it from there. We serve the agencies. So that's the big difference. We have a 62,000 square foot warehouse right here in Latham.
And that's double the size of this library, counting
Is
everything.
it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and we're 30 feet high, so we have racks that go up to 30 feet.
So the volume then is even
product.
bigger because our ceilings are only about 8 feet high
Okay,
in some
yep.
places.
So we have a huge facility. We also have a branch warehouse in the Lower Hudson Valley. We serve agencies in 23 counties. We serve about 1,000 different agencies in the whole eastern part of the state, from the New Jersey border all the way up to the Canadian border. Everything except Westchester County in the south, obviously New York City and Long Island. There are other food banks that handle those, but that whole eastern corridor of the state we cover from our 2 facilities.
That's a huge,
and we have tractor
huge
trailers.
responsibility.
Yeah, it's very different in terms of the scope of the work we do. It's very different than what a food pantry would do. A food pantry will serve individuals and families directly. So a person would go to a food pantry, they would give them usually a 3-day supply of groceries to help them get through a tough stretch in their lives. So that's the difference.
And a soup kitchen.
A soup kitchen is providing meals.
Okay.
So an individual or a family can go to a soup kitchen and they'll get that particular meal. It might be a lunch, it could be a dinner, could even be a breakfast.
So it's really in the name, the bank versus the pantry, which we all might have a pantry,
Right.
some smaller than others.
Right.
And then the kitchen.
Right. I think over time we've had many, many people volunteer at the food bank, or parents whose kids volunteer. And so we've had, over the years, more and more people come into our warehouse and see what we do, and they see the size of the warehouse. So I always say, I could talk to you for an hour about what we do. When you walk in the warehouse and you see the scope of what we do, it makes sense right then and there. So I think over time, with people seeing it, more people seeing it, there's more of an understanding that the food bank is a much larger in scope in terms of what we do. I wouldn't say we do the same work as the food pantries, but they're more the absolute direct service, and we provide this service to them so that they can serve more and more people in need.
The numbers that you just gave us, you mentioned a large supermarket might give 100,000 pounds.
Hundreds of thousands, yes.
Hundreds of thousands. That's a mind-boggling amount of food. It just makes us realize that this is a really big operation. And then when you delineate a major part of our area, now we're just thinking there's a lot of people in this space. How many pounds of food do you actually provide in a year?
In 2009, we provided about 22.4 million pounds of food.
And a million's kind of impossible, too.
Yeah,
How do you comprehend that?
Right. And in 2008, it was about 19.5 million. So we increased our distribution in 1 year by 3 million pounds. And that was in our 28th year of operation. So to have that kind of growth, about 15% growth.
How did you do
in 1
that?
year. Well, we worked hard on getting more food in, and the need has just been so great with the economy really struggling, people out of work, and just people who are working but really struggling to get by. The need has gone up tremendously. Fortunately, we've been able to access more food donations, and we're able to make that food available. So our distribution went up tremendously last year, and we anticipate this year we'll actually hit about 24 million pounds. So
wow.
It's been a dramatic
How do you
increase.
keep up?
We've been unbelievably busy. It really has. Our warehouse staff and our order taking staff are going flat out all the time. It's just been tremendously busy. Again, fortunately, donations have been strong. More and more fresh produce all the time. I was just walking through the warehouse today, and bins of watermelon and grapes and cantaloupe and potatoes and apples, just stuff just coming in regularly that is so much needed. Tomatoes, all kinds of fresh produce that we feel good about that, because not only do we know that we're helping to meet a need, but we're also providing more and more nutritious food, definitely more nutritious food than we've ever done in the past, which makes us feel great.
With this economy, and of course our exact region is not in as bad shape as
Right.
some areas, but you've said that more and more people have been using the service. Are you running flat out? Can you do more, or are you just hoping that things will drop off a little?
Well, you always hope that people aren't in the
Right, of
situation
course.
they're in. So yes, absolutely. We feel it's our obligation to try to do as much as we possibly can. Obviously, the need is greater than it was. There's no question. You ask any food pantry, any soup kitchen, they will tell you that the number of people they're serving today is much greater than it was a year ago or 2 years ago.
Now, we're getting into winter.
Oh,
is that going to be a bad
Yeah, the
thing?
holidays are always busy. The winter can be tough. Summer's tough
Okay.
for a lot of families because kids, when they're in school, at least they get a school lunch. When they're out of school, they don't have that. So summers, you don't think of hunger in the summer.
No.
You think maybe things will ease up, that you don't have to heat the home. So that there is some advantages that way, but at the same time, you have kids who are not getting that one important meal every day, sometimes breakfast and lunch
I didn't think
in
of
the
that.
school. So really all year long, people who are living on a limited income are always one bad break away from being in a difficult situation. That's just the nature.
And with layoffs,
It could be a layoff, could be somebody gets sick, could be the car breaks down.
disease, yeah.
Yeah, somebody gets hurt. Could be any number of things that if a lot of families, I think, have enough to get by. They get by. Something goes wrong. In some cases, the holiday season hits, and you want to provide your children with some kind of Christmas gifts or holiday gifts. You want to do something, and so you do something, but that may be your food budget, because food's always the first thing to go. You have to pay your rent, you have to pay your utilities, so those get done, but...
And that seems backwards.
Well, I think a lot of times people figure that, I can get by. I have stuff in my pantry, I have some
And what
food
would
in my
happen if you lose
refrigerator.
your house? Or I guess that would be
Right.
a big nightmare.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden they think they have enough to get by, and then they realize, uh-oh, we're down to just a little bit, and my next paycheck's not coming for another week, and that's when people find themselves in a tough situation, and that's when they'll turn to a food pantry for help.
Now, without you, what would the food pantries do?
It would be a much greater struggle. We participated in a hunger study. We're part of a national network of food banks called Feeding America. It used to be called America's Second Harvest. And we participated in a hunger study with Feeding America that did a number of things. It helped define for us the number of individuals we're serving. But one of the questions they asked the agencies we serve is, what impact would it have on your agency if the food bank did not exist, or if the food bank went out of business? And I might get the percentage wrong a little bit, but I think it was 94 to 96% said it would either have a significant or devastating impact on their programs.
Well, devastating is pretty severe.
Right, and even significant means that they'd continue to operate. This is the way I take it, continue to operate, but they could never meet the need that they're meeting right now.
So there would be an empty shelf at some point.
Right,
in
there
the
would
day
be
or
people
week.
they couldn't serve, or they would not serve the people as well. They'd have to cut back. That's typically what a pantry will do. They hate to close. They hate to turn anybody away. So their alternative is to cut back.
It's like rationing.
Right, and so maybe you don't get 3 days supply, maybe you get 2 days, maybe you get 1.5 days, but you get less than you would have. So without the food bank, I think almost every food pantry would be in a situation that they would be cutting back on their service at a time when that service is needed more than ever.
I know this isn't the fundamental issue. Getting people fed is really the fundamental issue, but it's still fascinating how you can manage logistics. You've got a huge territory. You're talking in hundreds and millions of pounds of food. What kind of warehouse system do you have? It must be amazing.
I think if you just saw the operation, and if you were familiar at all with other operations like that, it would just seem like a normal wholesale food distribution operation.
But I've never even been into a Walmart or a Kmart regional center.
It would be like that.
Okay.
Now they would obviously be bigger, but it would run kind of the same way.
But you have to handle little things and big things, and you must have trucks, pallets,
Oh,
all
yeah.
kinds of equipment.
Yeah, just like a regular warehouse. We receive product in on pallets. Everything is stored on pallets. We distribute. We have to pull orders like any other wholesaler would have to pull orders. We have everything is computerized in our system. One thing that is different is that we have to track everything by pound. And a company like you had mentioned, Walmart, or Price Chopper, whatever, they don't track by
More
pound.
item.
Yeah, item, quantities, price. Those are the things they would track more than pounds. So that would be one difference. And one other major difference is we get a lot of product that has to be sorted and repacked before it can be distributed. So we'll get in bins of potatoes or bins of watermelon or bins of apples, or we get damaged product in. So some of what's damaged, some of the cans are not, in a sense, fit for human consumption. Would be the designation.
The reject.
Maybe the dent is too severe, or it's on a seam, and by state guidelines we can't distribute it.
Yeah.
Right, could leak, or it is leaking. Labels ripped off, so you don't know what really the product is. We have to throw that product out. When we get what we call salvage, that damaged product, the packaging is damaged, we have to sort through every single item, and that we throw out what we can't keep, we keep what is still good, and then we repackage it into categories. So we might have salvage fruits and vegetables, salvage cereal, salvage coffee, salvage snacks, whatever it is. Or
And obviously with the
crackers.
fruits and vegetables, you got to move that stuff.
Well, yeah, let's say that would be canned products, so that would
okay.
that would be non-perishable. That would last a while. But that's one difference between the Foodbank and another wholesaler, is that they don't ever get anything like that. They don't sort and repack anything.
And you
It
don't
comes
even know
in
what
and it
you're
goes
gonna
out
get
that way. Oh
necessarily.
no, that's the other thing too. That's the other difference, is that we never know from day. We're not ordering. Now, we do buy some food to supplement our donations, but for the most part, we're not ordering product. A company will call us and say, I have a load of product for you. I'd like to donate. Do you want it? Yes, we'll take it. And even then, they might tell you what they're giving you, but rarely is it accurate.
Okay.
They're not as concerned about the numbers as you would. If we were buying it, we would make sure that if we ordered 100 cases, we got 100 cases. But that's one thing that's very different. We may have an item today, and we may never ever see that item again, or we may not see that same
Unique
exact
product,
item
yeah.
for another year or 6 months. It just kind of comes in and it goes out, and then maybe we'll see it again, maybe we won't, because that's the nature of the beast. We're taking the unsaleables from the food industry, and we are not in a situation where we could say, we're running low on our donated Cheerios, can you send us another load? It doesn't work that way.
Right. Now, I went to your website. It's a rich site. There's a lot of things that
Yes.
people could do there. One thing, and we'll try to get people to that website a little later.
Great.
I noticed something called The Farm. So you're a farmer now.
Yeah, we are. Never did I think.
What's that like?
Well, it's very interesting. It's called the Patroon Land Farm, and we don't own the farm. We manage the farm in collaboration with the Patroon Land Foundation. That's just an interesting story. A woman up in the hill towns, in the town of Knox, her name is Pauline Williman, many years ago, her family was in farming. They were dairy farmers many years ago, and so she inherited the land from her parents, and she wanted to make sure that that land stayed in agriculture. So she put it into a foundation, got the approval from the IRS, put it into a foundation to be preserved as agricultural land. But one of the conditions was that the land had to be used for charitable purposes. If it was going to be off the tax rolls and in a foundation, it had to do some good.
Wow.
So Pauline began growing some produce, and Pauline at that time was in her 70s, began to grow some produce and corn and squash and pumpkins, things like that, that she then donated to the food bank, and did that for a number of years. And our role was really to pick it up, get volunteers to help harvest the crop. But the harvests were declining every year, and because she was kind of doing it on her own and didn't really have a lot of resources to put into it, didn't have staff. And
maybe it wasn't changing crops around or whatever you need to know? Or?
Yeah, and also there was more growing infestation, so some of the, like the corn would have some infestation. So it got to the point where we felt that if this is really going to work, then maybe there's a way we could work more with Pauline and try to put some resources into it. So we talked together, came up with a proposal that for the food bank to take over management of the farm. Because we have a board of directors, a larger board of directors, we have more resources, more connections into the community, just because we've been around a while, and felt that we might be able to take over management of the farm and put more into it. And so we took over management with the approval of the Patroon Land Foundation in 2006. And without knowing anything, we found a great farm manager. Mark Weinheimer is our farm manager, and he took the job, and everything was kind of done on a whim and a prayer. You know, we had a dream and had faith that we could make it work, but our board of directors, give them a lot of credit. They believed in it. They felt this is something we could do, and the whole goal was to have some more control over some of the food that comes into the food bank. We knew it would be fresh product. We knew we'd be able to grow some food that is not as often donated to the food bank. We'd have control over it. So if we needed more, if we hadn't been seeing many tomatoes, we could grow more tomatoes, or we could grow a lot of broccoli or peppers, whatever it was, and we would have more control over what was coming into the food bank. And so the board bought into that and believed in it, and it started off, and it wasn't the greatest agricultural land. We had to nurture it. We got a lot of in-kind support to help.
So you had to upgrade the land?
Oh, we did. We needed to get some more fertilizer into the land, make it more fertile. It didn't drain well, a lot of clay. We had to get some drainage into the land. We had a lot of donated services to have the water flow off. Over time, we got a tractor. We got some other equipment to form beds, so now we're able to grow in a better way than we have in the past. We just almost are at completion of a barn on the property, so about a 2,400 square foot barn, which was a dream of ours, and again, that was done with almost all with donated labor and donations from the community to make that happen. And this year, we're still picking. We will harvest, we've already harvested over 100,000 pounds of produce off that farm this year, and it's fresh picked, comes down to the food bank, and the agencies have access to that fresh, right from the farm produce, and they love it.
Top of the line.
Yeah, it is. So we will probably pick over 120,000 pounds of produce off the farm this year. So we're really excited. It's really taken off. It needed a lot of work and a lot of love and nurturing for the first 4 years, and it still does. But we planted more acreage this year, and we've harvested far more than we've ever had in the first 4 years. So we're really excited about that. It's a wonderful endeavor. A lot of volunteers help out at the farm, as they do at the food bank, too.
Let's go right into this, volunteers. We've heard that word a few times. Would you like a few more volunteers?
We can always use volunteers at the farm and at the food bank. At the farm, volunteers will help plant in the spring. They'll weed. They'll get rid of stones. They'll care for the crops, and then come harvest season. So really, from July on.
Now, how do they get there, or do they drive? Do they?
They can drive to the farm this year, and we'll see if we continue it next year. We actually ran a shuttle to the farm. With one of our cars, we would run volunteers. If they didn't want to drive up there, they would just come to the food bank, leave their car, and we would shuttle them up to the farm.
Now, you're pretty close to the library, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we're about
Where exactly
2 miles.
are you?
We're right at the end of Albany Shaker Road, almost to Route 7, all the way at the end on 965.
So up toward Plug Power?
Right across the street.
Okay.
From Plug Power.
There we go.
Yep, all the way up, almost up to Keeler Motor Car, which is right at the end of Albany Shaker, right on Route 7. So we're right up at the end of Albany Shaker.
And the farm is?
It's in the town of Knox. It's right near Thatcher Park, actually.
Oh,
it's around the corner on Ketchum Road.
Yeah.
So if you went up the hill through Thatcher Park, go all the way through the park, and after you leave the park, you take your first right, which is Ketchum Road. You go down about a mile, and you can't miss it. It's on the right, has a sign out there. You can't miss the fields.
Great.
Yeah.
What other kind of volunteer opportunities
But at the
are
food
there?
bank, yes, there's
Yeah.
people. Most of our volunteers at the food bank work in the warehouse, and they would typically sort and repack product. I talked about that earlier.
Right.
And we have school groups. A lot of kids come in. The groups of developmentally disabled adults typically will come in. We have a lot of businesses. A lot of banks will send groups in to volunteer, and a lot of different companies will have a day or an afternoon when they have their people out in the community. In fact, there was a group there today when I left, volunteering. When I left to come over here, there was a group volunteering from one of the local banks, and that happens all the time. We have church groups, some groups from state offices will come, all different scout troops.
Do they have to be trained, or they can just?
Well,
it
for the
sounds
most
like you
part,
can almost walk in and find something
Yeah,
for
for
them.
most of those types of groups, they'll volunteer mostly in the evenings and on weekends, and they're doing the sorting and repacking. So they might have a bin of potatoes, and they'll just
So you'll just put them right.
they'll take that and they'll put them in boxes,
that
get
apron
20
on
pounds
and-
in a box. And then we do have some volunteers who are more trained.
Okay.
They'll sort the salvage, the damaged goods.
So if you have time
and they
over,
right, and they have to know what is acceptable and what is not. And there are guidelines that the state has. So that takes a little bit of training for them. And so we have some volunteers who come in every week, sometimes a couple times a week, and that's what they do. They go to the salvage room, they sort and repack product in the salvage room. We also have volunteers who work in the office. There's different jobs that we have in there. And we also have a number of volunteers who help with fundraisers. They get on our committees. We have a golf tournament, a dinner, an auction, our holiday hunger appeal, which is coming up. And these people volunteer, get on the committees. They help us recruit sponsors. They help get people to come to the dinner. We have our mac and cheese bowl coming up next February. We're looking for committee members to serve on that committee. They get sponsors, they get people to attend, maybe get raffle prizes and auction items, all different types of activities they can do as a member of the committee. And that's very important. Our fundraising events not only raise money for us, because we're not a government agency, we're a private nonprofit. So we have to raise most of the funds from the private sector. So our fundraisers are very important to us. And they not only raise money, they bring us new friends. There's no question that many of the people who are involved with the food bank first got involved by coming to our golf tournament or coming to our dinner or our auction. And they came because someone invited them. They learned a little bit more about the food bank, maybe came over and visited, and then they fell in love with what they saw. They became really committed to the food bank. So those events are very important to us.
So whether it's donating some cash or
Right.
time,
Right.
almost anybody can help.
Right? Time, talent, and treasure. So there are people who will donate time to help with some consulting and some guidance in certain areas. That doesn't happen as much, but most of it is, if you want to get your hands dirty and you want to do something that is just very basic work, I know for me, I like work like that because I'm at work on my job as director of the food bank. I'm thinking all the time. There's a lot of time on the computer, a lot of time in meetings and things like that. It's just nice to just touch something, to sort and repack product. And I think a lot of people are in that situation where their jobs are, they're not using their hands as much. But when you come to the food bank and you're in the warehouse and you're sorting a bin of potatoes, you know that the work you're doing is making it possible for those potatoes to get to a family that needs some help. And I think people make that direct connection, that without that, those potatoes they're in a bin of 2,000 pounds. Unless they get out of that bin into some other container, they're going to sit in that bin and rot. So I think people feel good about knowing that they got their hands dirty, they really got into something, and they know it's a concrete service that's benefiting somebody else in the community who could use a helping hand.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What's the best way to reach you? I know you've got email on the website, phone number. What
Sure.
can people do?
Most people will call. Our phone number is 786-3691. And they can, if they're interested in volunteering or whatever, they can call and they'll be connected to the right person at the food bank. Our website is www.regionalfoodbank.net. And there's all different all different kinds of information on the website. And if you're interested in volunteering, there's also a link you can connect to on the website and just send an email saying I'm interested in volunteering. We get that all the time.
And then I noted all your programs, and I don't want to focus on something that's going to be next week because I would like to be able to show this a little longer. Are on that website.
Oh yes, yeah. All of our different, the different programs we run, which are pretty much throughout the year, and also the different events and activities we conduct are all on the website. Again, if you want to volunteer, you can just click right there and you can get connected to the food bank. I don't know how people get my email, but I get emails from people. Yeah, I know. I get emails from people saying, I'd like to volunteer, how can I, and I'll connect them to our volunteer coordinators. Okay. And that's really all that's involved.
They click on staff, and there you are.
Yep, maybe that's how I get it.
That's how I did it.
And then this time of year, we get really busy with volunteers. I'll be honest with you about that because the holidays bring out the charitable nature and the good feelings in a lot of people. They want to give back at that time of year, which is wonderful.
Right, okay, good.
So beginning in October right through like January, we get lots of groups, lots of requests for volunteers. So if you were interested, especially if you wanted to have a group come in and volunteer, I would really encourage you to call or email very soon, because it is possible if you wanted to get some time in November or December, we may not be able to take a group just because we're booked.
But by the same token, please come in January and February.
Oh, right,
March,
yeah, we
April.
can take you after that, and don't not try. And if you're an individual or a family, two, three, 4 people, we can usually connect you with another group. So we may have a group of 10, 15, 20 coming in, but if you wanted to come in on a certain date, as long as we weren't overbooked, we can usually be pretty flexible and we would let you know there's a group coming in that day. If you don't mind working with a group of people, we'll connect you to that group, and you'll be a helping hand for them.
Fantastic.
Also, yeah. So we can get people lined up for volunteering, and we definitely could use a lot of volunteers. There's just a lot of good product coming into the food bank that needs those volunteer hands to sort and repack. We could never do what we do without those volunteers.
I can see a line of people getting food from one place to another and just handing it off. It's nice,
oh, yeah.
Nice image.
Yep.
Thank you much, Mark.
Well, thank you, Richard. I
Wonderful.
appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show, and that you do find time to call the food bank or check their website and see what they're doing, maybe even an event. In the meantime, have a great week, and watch again next time. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.